there, and welcome to the very first episode of our Dynamo for Revit series. Today, we're not just diving into Dynamo. I'm also going to cover a little bit about programming and the history of Dynamo. And I just wanted to make a small note that this series is kind of based on the Dynamo Primer. So if you haven't checked out the Dynamo Primer yet, go ahead and do so. I highly recommend it. It is an amazing resource, and I'll put the link down below. So if you've ever caught wind of Dynamo, or you've seen it lurking up in the Manage tab of your Revit toolbar, and you've wondered, what the heck is that? Then you're in the right place. Follow along this series, and I promise you'll be using Dynamo like a pro in no time. But first, I want to talk a little bit about programming, because at the end of the day, Dynamo is a programming language. Now, programming is the process of creating a set of instructions for a computer to follow. It's really as simple as that. It's like giving a set of directions, and the computer is going to then accomplish that task. But instead of speaking in human language like English, we're using a programming language that computers can understand. And I always consider coders to be bilingual because of that. I mean, they are, in a sense, speaking another language. Instead of speaking to humans, though, they're speaking to computers, and I find that really cool. Now, when it comes to programming, there are different types of languages. Now, one type, which is the most common type, is textual scripting languages. And you're probably more familiar with those, or you've heard of some of them, like Python or JavaScript or C#. And they're done using a text-based syntax. Now, these languages are extremely powerful and flexible, which is why most people use it, and it's a lot more common. But they are extremely intimidating to most people, especially me. When I first got started, I was extremely intimidated by writing out text-based code, which is why I started off in Dynamo. On the other hand, we do have visual scripting languages as well. That's what Dynamo is. And you might have seen some other ones, like maybe Grasshopper for Rhino. In visual scripting languages, you build programs by connecting them graphically on a canvas, as they're called nodes. Later in this episode, we will cover what nodes are and how to connect them, so don't worry if you don't quite get that yet. Now, this visual approach does make it easier and kind of breaks down that barrier to programming for many people, including myself. It's kind of the gateway to programming, I always say. So the question is, why do designers and architects tend to more easily understand visual scripting languages like Dynamo? Well, think about it. As designers, we're used to working visually. We like to sketch things, we doodle, and we bring our ideas to life with color and much more. Visual scripting languages tap into that creativity and making it a lot easier to turn our wildest dreams into reality. So, okay, we've covered Programming 101. Let's rewind the clock and take a peek at how this whole Dynamo journey started. Back in 2009, while working at Burrell Happold, the brilliant Ian Keogh, and please excuse my pronunciation, anyway, he had a light bulb moment and Dynamo was born. You see, he was working a lot in Rhino and using Grasshopper and was trying to replicate that in order to transfer data between Rhino and Revit. So then he developed Dynamo, and boy, did he succeed. But then he left Burrell Happold, and being the amazing guy that he is, he made it open source in 2011 so that a team at Autodesk can start working on it. By 2013, Autodesk had a full team working on Dynamo, and the first stable version of Dynamo for Revit was released, finally. In 2017, the Dynamo player was also introduced, which brought the ability to launch a Dynamo script without the need to have Dynamo running. This made Dynamo a lot more easily accessible to people who don't even need to know Dynamo. And then in 2020, Autodesk finally integrated Dynamo into the Revit installer, so you didn't have to install it separately. And that was a relief to a lot of us. And the rest is, as you say, history. All right, so fast forward to today. And Dynamo has become, to a lot of people, including myself, the superhero of Revit. It's like kind of Revit's ultimate sidekick, empowering people like you and like me to create jaw-dropping designs and automate tasks with a click of a button. And hey, I'm hoping that's why you're here, right? So let's dive in. When you fire up Dynamo and Revit, get ready to dive into a workspace that's as clean and intuitive as it gets. Picture this. There's 5 main zones awaiting your creative touch. At the tippy top, we've got the menus, your go-to for all things functionality. Below that, say hello to the toolbars, your trusty sidekick for quick actions. Now shift your gaze over to the left where the library panel beckons. It's your treasure trove of nodes just waiting to bring your ideas to life. And smack dab in the center, well, that's your playground, the workspace, where you'll connect those nodes and watch your creations take shape. Don't forget about the bottom bar. That's your execution bar, where the magic happens. Need more options? Just right-click anywhere on the canvas and let the fun begin. And hey, let's not forget about those snazzy menus. From getting started guides to interactive tutorials, Dynamo's got your back. Feeling stuck? No worries. Hit up the help menu for a lifeline to Dynamo's online resources. Now on to the toolbar. It's your handy toolkit for file management and quick actions. Need to undo that accidental deletion? Just hit that undo button and you're back in business. On the far right is another button that will export a snapshot of your workspace, which is extremely useful for documentation and sharing. And last but not least, let's talk about that execution bar, your script's launchpad. Whether you're running your script automatically, going manual, or setting up a periodic run, this is where the magic happens. Let's take a closer look at the Dynamo library. It's packed with nodes, which are the building blocks of your Dynamo graphs. Nodes represent actions, operations, or data inputs, and you connect them with wires to define the flow of information. The library contains all the loadable nodes, including the default nodes that come with the installation, as well as any additional loaded custom node packages. The nodes are organized hierarchically within libraries, categories, and subcategories based on their functions. Functions can easily even be broken down into 3 parts: create data, execute an action, or query data, and you can see that here in the library. The default library will contain 11 categories of nodes, which you can explore. There's the dictionary, display, geometry, import-export, input, list, math, Revit, script, string, and units. Then you will have your add-ons where you will be able to find all those other packages or any custom nodes that you create. Feeling lost in the sea of nodes? Fear not. You've got search at your fingertips. But hey, as a beginner, I do always recommend diving into the hierarchy of the library. Trust me, it's really like following a map, and it will help you understand exactly what each node does and why it's essential. And here's a pro tip. Hover over any node and bam, a tooltip appears, packed with details like the descriptions, inputs, and outputs. It's like having your own personal guide as you navigate the library. Now, either during this video, pause, or later on, take a moment to explore, experiment, and uncover the wonders of the Dynamo library. All right, let's dive deep into Dynamo's building blocks, the nodes, and the wires. These bad boys are the heart and soul of your Dynamo graph. First up, let's talk nodes. These are like the superheroes of Dynamo, each with its own unique power to perform specific actions or represent data inputs. Now, most nodes have 5 key parts, kind of like, their DNA. One is the name. This is how we identify our node, usually following a really neat category.name convention. And that's also how you can search for them in the search bar. 2 is the main body. This is where the magic happens. You can also right-click here and a world of options opens up. 3 are your input ports. These are like the hungry mouths of your nodes, eagerly waiting for data to chew on. 4 are the output ports, and these are where your nodes spit out the results of their hard work. 5 is the lacing icon. This little guy in the corner has all of the lacing options for you. Now, let's talk node states. Dynamo is like your kind of personal assistant, giving you visual cues to let you know how your nodes are feeling. That's the benefit of having a visual scripting language. From satisfied and well connected to warning signs and red flags, there's a whole rainbow of states to keep an eye out for. Take some time, either again, now or later on, to explore the 9 different node states. There's satisfied inputs, unsatisfied inputs, function, selected, frozen, preview off, warning, error, and info. If you do happen to have any warnings or errors, don't worry. Dynamo today is better than ever and has evolved to help solve these warnings or errors in a visual way. Warnings or errors will have a tooltip above the node that you can hover over and expand, which will provide you information to help you resolve the issue. All right, let's move on to the wires, the unsung heroes of your Dynamo graph. These bad boys are the lifeline and define the flow of information, connecting the output port of one node to the input port of another node. Now, here's the deal. Wires definitely have directionality. Just like the flow of text that you read, that's why input ports are on the left and output ports are on the right. It's all about keeping the flow smooth and intuitive. Creating a wire is as easy as a couple of clicks. Just left click on a port of one node, then do the same on a port of another. And voila, connection established. You can even watch as the dashed line when the wire is unconnected transforms into a solid line of data goodness. And here's the kicker. Even after you've made the connection, you're still in the driver's seat. Want to tweak those inputs or outputs? No problem. Just click away and make those adjustments like a pro. But hey, sometimes you do need a clean state and you need to get rid of those wires. So in order to get rid of them, simply pull it away and left click on the canvas and they will vanish. Now let's talk wire states. There are 2, but they are important. By default, they are gray. But if you select a node, all wires connected to it will turn aqua. As you level up your Dynamo game, you might want to declutter a bit. Really complex graphs can have wires going in all sorts of directions, and it can get a little overwhelming. That's where the magic of hiding wires comes in. Just head on over to the View tab, untick Show Connectors, and bask in the simplicity of a wire-free canvas. Now, if that's too much, you can even hide individual wires with a right click. It's like customizing your workspace to fit your unique style. Wires may be humble, but they're mighty powerful. With a dash of creativity and a sprinkle of know-how, you'll be weaving your data magic in no time. And there you have it. That's a brief introduction to Dynamo for Revit, from its origins to its integration into Revit and a tour of the user interface. Now, in the next episode, we'll dive deeper into working with data. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Now, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Remember, stay empowered, stay inspired, and always challenge what's possible.